And then I am screen sharing. Can you see my screen? Says ready, set, start your business.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. All right, perfect. So we are Tillamook Bay Community College Small Business Development Center, and we are one of 36 that are located in the state of Oregon. And we are usually hosted by a community college or an organization such as that. Community college more so than universities because of the ability to have us located in their facilities and to do a little bit more of the workforce training or career training than you would see in a normal university setting. We're going to do introductions, which is always kind of fun. So my name is Terry Fladstall, and I have been working with the SBDC for 2 years. And I actually started in this class as on your side. I was going to look into the possibility of being able to start my own business doing consulting. I am a bookkeeper, accounting major, never wanted to do taxes. I didn't want to be tied to that time frame. And so I actually teach classes now for the SBDC. I teach QuickBooks. I teach the Ready, Set, Start class that you guys are in today, and several of the small business management classes, as well as advise small businesses. And that was always kind of one of my desires when I got started in consulting for myself. I never expected. It was funny. I walked into the office and they're like, yes, and would you like to start advising? And I'm like, sure. So that's where I come from. And as I said, I've been here for 2 years and have met with several hundreds of people through this process. So what is the Small Business Development Center? And our biggest vision goal is to help small businesses become successful and to walk alongside them and help them from startup to continue to be successful. And we're available to small businesses at any point in time. Everything that we discussed today is confidential. So you guys, whatever that you're willing to share during this time is not shared with anyone else. It is strictly between the 3 of us and this recording, which will be given to the 2 of you. And the SBDC's goal is to make sure that you have all the tools that you need to be able to be successful in everything we can do along the way, as far as financing, confidentiality, and the skills, or that's where a lot of the classes come into play, is giving you the skill set that you need to run your business. So let's take a moment, and Michaela, why don't you introduce yourself, and then Kurt, if you will, following her.
My name is Michaela and I live in Portland. I'm currently a freelance designer and make a lot of toy products just usually as gifts or one-offs, and looking to create a business around manufacturing and distributing a toy line.
Okay, Kirk.
All right. My name is Kirk Preston. I currently live in Tillamook, just right across from the community college in the apartments. I'm currently I'm ex-military, and I'm currently looking to start up a security firm, at least small time, because the apartments currently need one.
Okay. Thank you for your service. And when you say that you're ex, are you working with the local VA?
Yes, I was working with I can't remember his name now. I want to say
Colonel Bill?
Yeah, Bill Hatton.
Bill Hatton, yep. Okay. All right. So both of you have a pathway, I guess might be the best way to say that, in a woman-owned business or a vet-owned businesses. There are resources that are available to help you to be able to start that. I would encourage you both to take advantage of. They are helpful in helping you to kind of get that first step set up and that process going. It's hard enough sometimes on our own, but if we are willing to go a couple of different routes or unique routes, then those are incredibly helpful, and I encourage you to be willing to look at those. So objectives, and some of the things that we're going to talk about, you guys will probably start laughing. You will have heard, and obviously some of these are exaggerated just a little bit to just get your attention. But what we want to look at today is business ownership right for you. Is it something that you have the skill set for and are willing to, you're going to give up things for it. And so that's part of our exploration in this class, is to hit you with some of those areas and say, were you aware of this? Are you ready for this? Have you thought about this? So we're going to look at business opportunities, the very basics of starting a business. And it's really very, very simple. You can go onto the State of Oregon website, pay $100, and you've started a business for all intents and purposes. That obviously is not all that's involved in it, but it's interesting that that's all it takes on paper to become a business. And sometimes that's the most intimidating part to people. Once we get past the paper, then things move along. Where to and how to access money, and being able, as we know, money is going to be an issue, and being able to get set up and running. Planning for and managing growth, finding resources, and then anticipating an exit strategy. And the exit strategy is one that I like to actually start with, and it seems to throw some people, but it's what is your reason for going into business? And what are you looking for as far as coming out? How are you going to exit your business? And that question is really important, because if you don't know how you're going to exit, it's sometimes difficult to choose what you need to, or how you need to set up your business. So I'll explain that further as we go along. Are you sure you want to do this? So I'm not going to read this out loud. I'll give you guys a second to read it, but this is a help wanted ad for a business owner. So have you been able to read through?
Yeah, sounds great.
I can see the grin on your face, and it's like, yeah. And this is why I said oftentimes we might hear some of these comments from people. And another one that I have wanted to add is, and start a business because you get to write off everything. And it's always funny. It's like, okay, but I can't write it off if I don't have it in the first place. You know, it just seems like this wide open pot of gold, and I can just grab from it and then I can write it off. And so any thoughts as you read through that, other than, you know, okay, yeah, I get it?
I guess there's not really any surprises.
Okay. Kirk, do you have something?
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's holding back much, is it?
No. And I think that that's part of the point, is to say, okay, let's get real and talk about the real aspects of this. And as we move forward, we'll go through some of that. So the good news, small businesses produce approximately 46% of the private sector and 50% of the private jobs, and that was in 2010. We're hoping to get some updates to that now that it's 10 years later. What I'd like to know is, what do you guys think a small business is? So give me a name of a small business.
Carl Wilson's Guitar Shop.
Okay. What about Tillamook? I went blank. Tillamook Creamery. Do you consider that to be a small business or a large business?
I consider that to be a large business, considering they have products and factories just all across the U.S.
Okay. According to the small business definition, they are a small business.
Really?
Yes. And that is oftentimes, I think, what surprises most of us is that we're thinking that it's a mom and pop shop or the guitar shop or something that is on the corner. It's run by a family. You know, it's small, but the reality is that, again, 50% of the private sector jobs are coming from small businesses. So it's the number of employees, which is under 500, and the amount of money that is brought in. And when I first took the class and they said Tillamook Cheese was a small business, I was like, no. You know, and you think about the volume, like you said, of products that they have and how far reaching that they're able to go with the products, it would seem like they would be a rather large business. A college degree is not required to be successful in business. There are a lot of resources available to help, and business ownership is the best path to personal wealth. Those are proven, and that is the good news. So now we're going to look at the bad news. SBA, and you probably have heard a lot about the Small Business Administration during the last few months, estimates that 34% of new businesses fail in the first 2 years. And we'll talk a little bit about why that is and how to work through that. Banks will generally not loan money to a business until after the third profitable year of operation. And your personal credit score matters. So what's important there is that third profitable year. So you could be in business for 3 years and not be profitable yet, and the bank is not going to be willing, or, and when we talk about banks, let's just talk about the traditional funding that we're all used to. And so when they want to see us have 3 profitable years of operation, sometimes that could be that we've been in business 10 years. And so that's a frustrating thing that we as small businesses run into, is that when we need help, it's difficult to find it. A good business plan is often necessary to obtain funding. And I don't know if either one of you have worked on a business plan or have looked at trying to put together the structure that you would like to see. Business plans have changed dramatically from, let's say, even in the last 10 years, from the traditional that you would use to go, you know, take in. It was like a book. It felt like a ream of paper, and you would sit down in front of somebody and they would go through and scour it and highlight and do all of these things, and you'd walk away going, okay, let's move on to the next thing. And now the business plans that we create are more flowing and changeable, and they're a guide to get us to where we want to go. They're not, we write it and we set it up on a shelf and we never look at it again. We actually use it to guide us all the way through to our next steps. And they've made great strides. And I don't know if you guys are used to the old resume system. And when I say old, it's like the, you know, the internet, the difference between dial-up and when dial-up first came up and that was the only thing that we had, and we would start it and then leave and come back. And now we're so impatient if we don't have a constant stream, or we get a little bit of a lag. That's kind of the difference between the business plans of the old days and now, is that, you know, you press the button and you waited and waited and waited, and now it flows and is consistent. Insufficient cash flow is a major cause of business failure, and cash flow is something that we'll talk about and why it's important, what it actually means. Operating a business can cause severe marital stress, so you need to be aware of that. Most business owners lack some of the skills needed to be successful, and we'll talk about that as well, because there's a very easy solution to that, and part of it is just being willing and knowing that up front as you walk in. And then business ownership can be a path to bankruptcy. That is a fact. So matching your personal skills with market opportunities. The thing that you guys may already be somewhere along in this process is identifying your reasons for starting a business. Why do you want to branch out now and go in this direction? Where, has something changed in your life? Are you seeing a need and you're looking to fill it? If you guys have identified those and you understand those, that helps you as you move forward to be able to communicate that in both your business plan and in conversations with people that you're looking for financing or assistance with. Know your risk tolerance. So on your risk tolerance, do either of you have an idea of what you might think that means, risk tolerance?
I don't know what that means.
I don't know either.
Okay. The best example that I have come up with and consistently see it when I'm in classes with people is, how do you handle finances? Do you like to have $1,000 in savings all the time? Preferably more, but when the balance comes down to 1,000, you start to panic. Or are you just thankful that you have $5 left at the end of the month? Somewhere in there is your risk tolerance. And knowing that is incredibly helpful as you start out, because if you're a person that you don't do well if you don't have that 1,000 plus in your savings, and something happens in the business and you need to go down to, let's even say 500, and that is creating a lot of stress on you, even though intellectually you get the reason why you're doing it and you understand, and maybe you've got a $500 payment coming in and you're going to be back to your 1,000. What happens to you during that risk tolerance? The stress and everything that takes place there. It's a really simple one, but almost everybody can identify with that. A lot of people are like, hey, I had $5 in my account at the end of the month. I'm great. And usually you'll be working with someone who is the opposite of you. And so they've been stressed that whole time and you're fine. And then when they're stressed, you're fine. You guys, can handle that. So you need to know what your risk tolerance is. Are you willing to lay everything out for this adventure, or are there some things that you need to have in place before you do? And then research market potential or feasibility of your idea. Have either one of you done any market research?
Not formally.
Okay.
Investigated other comparable small businesses.
Okay. And Kirk, have you?
I've done some checking around to see what other security companies have done.
Or exist?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that is one of the things that we're able to help you with at the Small Business Development Center, is from this step of, is this what I want to do? Do I want to move forward? Then you can set up an appointment with an advisor and say, I want to do this, and let's move forward to the next step. And we can help you by ordering market research. And the market research that we order can be specific to whatever you're wanting to know. So you get a little bit of, there's some, templates to it where everybody gets a piece, but then you can turn around and look at it and say, what's involved in the startup of it? What demographic am I looking at? And you can pull up a lot more of the characteristics that you want that would be beneficial to you. Certainly, Michaela, in looking at toys, you know, who is your target market? And who's going to be spending the money and what's important to them. And so those are things that you can look at as well. And then Kirk, you're looking more at a business that's looking for your services, or not necessarily the average person that's looking for security. Not that they might not, but you're actually looking at more of what a business is requiring, or an event, or something on a larger scale. So you're going to want to look at that versus, you know, the demographic of who lives in the area that you're working with. Analyzing both your good and your bad personal characteristics. What are you good at? What are you bad at? What do you, and how do you handle those things? If it's something that you don't want to do you tend to walk away and leave it and hope it goes away? Or do you somehow figure out how to push through it anyway? You need to know that. And most of us know that about ourselves, but we've got to be really honest about this as we move into this venture. And is your family supportive of your new venture? That's a very critical point. And it's not only the family that maybe you live within the four walls of your home with, but extended family as well. And then, do you have the skills and experience to be successful in the type of business you've chosen? Both of you already have experience in the area, and you're looking at moving forward into what you've already been working in. So I think that's an easy one to answer. And then doing a SWOT analysis. Have you heard of the term SWOT before? It seems to be a new buzzword in the industry lately, but it's to identify your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and threats. And when you do a SWOT analysis, it helps you to identify those areas that you're going to need to reach out and get assistance with. You're going to just be aware of them and know that you don't want to leave that one lagging behind. You're going to want to stay on top of it. And then what opportunities are available that maybe you haven't thought about before. This last 3 months that we have been in has been a huge opportunity and threat for a lot of small businesses, especially restaurants that maybe hadn't been set up to do anything other than dine in. So when they shut their doors, it was, I have no options. And then some of them decided to go ahead and do carry out only. Some businesses decided to start delivery. It used to be, Portland's got way more opportunities than we do in Tillamook. We don't have anybody other than Pizza Hut out here that delivered. So that was a big thing to find. We don't have the Uber drivers or any of the delivery services that a metropolitan area has. So people were scrambling to figure out how to do that. Those are the things that you need to look at. And it kind of goes back to the old adage of, are all my eggs in one basket, or do I have multiple sources and opportunities out there, and am I watching for those? Feasibility, this is one that we look at in the market research as well, and that is, who are the customers you will serve? Have you identified who your ideal customer is? And what are their needs, wants, concerns, problems? And Michaela, you said you have a baby in the other room, so I'm assuming that part of what you're feeling is not only your own desires as a parent, but you're probably hearing it from friends and family around you as well.
Yeah.
You know, people are giving you a lot of great feedback.
Yeah.
And then Kirk, you're also going to have that. You mentioned that the apartment building that you're living in doesn't have security. And so what are their concerns? What are they wanting to have security for? Is it just to have a presence, or do they need somebody on site able to address things and stop them immediately so that they don't get out of hand? How will your business product or service resolve their needs, wants, and concerns? So there's two parts to that. And one is identifying what they are, and then how are you going to meet that need? Next, we go into how will customers find your business? So what type of presence are you going to have? It's not the typical brick and mortar building or storefront that we are used to some degree. And we have identified a new segment in the marketplace. It's called a gig economy. And I don't know if you guys have heard that term, but a gig is, you know, we're used to it when people would say, yeah, I have a gig, I'm going to play at a wedding, or they were a photographer who was going to go do photographs at a wedding, or they were doing senior pictures. It was that event or that opportunity where they went and did a quote gig, but they didn't necessarily have their own business up and running. They were just, it was kind of a side. And now we're finding that more and more people, the gig, and they're calling it a gig economy, is where these are businesses that are up and running, and they don't have the typical brick and mortar. They don't have the storefront where people can find them. Sometimes it's just a presence on Facebook or on a website, and they're getting and making tons of money and able to provide a service and a product that is much needed in the marketplace. So realize that as well, as when you look at how will customers find your business, is what multiple ways are you going to be able to get your information out there? What makes your idea unique? And how much will customers be willing to pay? And how often? So it's one thing if a customer is willing to pay $100, but they're only willing to pay $100 once a year. If they're willing to pay $20 and they pay $20 12 months out of the year, that's the difference. If they're only willing to pay $100 and to do that once a year, that means you've got to have a lot of customers, and you're almost in a constant state of marketing and trying to bring in. My husband has worked in the food industry for a long time, most of our marriage, and he has said in a number of times that it's much easier, and the targeting of potato chips is not to bring in new people to, you know, try Doritos. It's to keep the people who are eating Doritos. And so oftentimes, you know, the marketing, which seems kind of contrary to me, but I get it, is, you know, I always thought you were wanting to bring and introduce new people. And so you may have seen in the last couple of years where Lay's has done this choose a flavor, and they've put together like the mozzarella and kind of a pizza flavor. They did a barbecue. Trying to remember all the ones that they did, but it was really interesting. Some of them, it's like, how in the world did they come up with them? And they would put it out for just a little bit to see how it was received. And so what they were doing is they were interacting with their marketplace and their current customers to find out what else they needed to do. If Lay's loses a customer, or Doritos, I'm not sure who owns Doritos, but then it's harder to bring one back than it was to keep them, if that makes sense. So you need to know that about your customers, is what are they willing to buy enough, often enough for your business to be successful? Or are you getting one-time customers and then you're spending all of your time trying to get more? Because as you know, and I probably would guess that you have done this as well yourself, is your word of mouth and your experience with the company is oftentimes what brings in other customers. People that maybe had never heard of it or weren't willing to try it are now willing to, based on the experience that you had. You guys have any questions before I want to keep motoring through, but I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you as well.
I can handle it so far.
Okay. Michaela, you good?
Yes.
So the basics of starting a business is research, lots and lots and lots of research, which you guys have mentioned that you've done that maybe in an informal manner to start with, and now you're at the point where you're like, okay, let's crank this up. Written business plan or venture feasibility study based on research. So that was, again, one that we both work with doing business plans. We use a program called LifePlan to help you to write one. And the next step after a class like this is to move into that business plan class. And we offer that class for $175 and a refund of $125 if you get your business plan written within 6 months of the class. And so it makes it basically, you're able to write a business plan for $50 and we walk you through it. The thing that I love about the Life Plan program is that it asks you questions. And as you answer the questions, you're able to develop your business plan. And it's not one of those where now somebody has told you need to write a business plan and you're sitting in front of your computer and it's a white page. And you're going, I don't even know where to start. And I don't know how to project how much money I think I'm going to make, how much it's going to cost me to do this or that. And so the way that Life Plan is broken down, it asks you very specific questions. You're able to answer those questions. And then as you answer them, you start to see that business plan come together. And again, the feasibility study, based on research, will be research that you are able to get through an advisor. You need to be able to come up with a business name, logo, or trademark. And when I say come up with a business name, it's that you're required to do a search and make sure that it's not already taken in the state that you live in or the state that you're working at. So obviously you would not want to start a business in Oregon with the name Walmart. But you're also going to need to be able to run that and find out if maybe somebody in Bend or somebody in Burns currently has that name, then you cannot use that name. You will be surprised at how many times you go in and run names and you think I finally found the right one and somebody somewhere has it and you're like, oh, got it, I got to start over. Logos become a very important piece of your business because that tells people who you are. And when they see the logo, we're all very familiar with the Golden Arches. We're very familiar with the Burger King, the colors that are part of your logo. There's a reason that you see the yellows and reds in food. They tend to tempt us. Something psychological is like, okay, now I'm hungry. So those are things that you need to plan for and be aware of. And then trademarks. Are they necessary for your business and what's involved in them? How long will it take? Have you looked into that at all, Michaela?
Trademarks?
Yes, or patents or?
Yes, I've worked with trademarks just as a designer.
Okay,
I haven't looked at it for this specific yet.
Okay, but you're aware of some of those ways of protecting yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. So registration takes place at several levels. One is, the first one is with the state that you are registering in. So in this instance, it's the state of Oregon. And you will also want to register with the federal government or the IRS, and we'll talk about that. Licensing takes place not only with the state, but it takes place with the city that you're operating in. Or the location. So you may have, you'll have the registration, the licensing to operate in the state of Oregon, but then each city has certain requirements as well, or counties. So in Tillamook, if you're not in the city limits of Tillamook, then you do not have to have a license. So if you're a little further out in the county, you're fine. But the minute that you move into cities, so if you go from Tillamook to Bay City, Garibaldi, each of those individual cities may require a license. So if you're operating, and I assume, Michaela, out of home, because you're currently, so where you live will be where they will require a license. But if you were to then create a storefront or move into a brick and mortar type location, that may not be the same area that you live in, and they may require a license.
Okay.
So that's something to be aware of and keep on your radar.
Okay.
Location, funding, banking, record keeping, insurance, legal issues, taxes, and employees are all things that we'll continue to talk about. And some of those are also based on how you set up your business. So registration and licensing in Oregon, you can go to the website filinginorgan.com, and it'll take you through a business wizard. So it's going to ask you questions about what you're doing, where you're doing it, and if you are required to have licensing, permitting, or some regulation requirements. And again, that is going to go to your license as a hairdresser, your license to operate as a restaurant, license to serve liquor at the restaurant. All of those things, as you answer the questions, will come into play. If you're offering a service like other than with the like a hairdresser or a salon, they have certain health requirements and they have to have inspections. So if I'm offering a service as a business consultant, I don't necessarily have to have a license that I would as a salon or as a hairdresser. So those are, again, those things that will be identified and tell you what you need. There's forms on the website that they will give you or direct you to if you need to then apply for licensing and permitting. And they'll also give you where those resources are available within the state. And then there's access to other business related information that is very, very helpful. And then again, locally, you may need to contact a business license. So I work out of home, from home, the majority of time, but I do go to clients because as I'm doing bookkeeping services, sometimes I need to be at their site and dealing with whatever issue they're having with bookkeeping at their location. So I have to have a business license, even though I work from home and I don't have a brick and mortar, because I am within the city limits. And it's interesting because I have to display it here in my house and it's just for me. So those may be things that you'll have to look at as well. Choosing a legal form of business, and this is where I want to go back to the exit strategy. Have either one of you thought about what type of entity you will set up, or have you looked into it much further?
I have not looked into it.
Okay. So, Kirk, have you looked into it at all?
Not really, no.
Okay. So let me ask you this question first. How do you want to end the business? You have been working in it, you've got it started, you love it, you've been working in it for 20 years, and now you're ready to retire. What do you want to do with the business?
I suppose I'd want to give it to make sure that it keeps going.
And how are you going to make sure it keeps going? Are you going to sell it, or are you going to?
Oh, probably a partnership.
Okay. All right. And then, Michaela, what's your thought?
I would hope that it would be, if it's 20 years down the line and it's been successful, that it's something that I would be able to sell.
Okay. So having that exit strategy in mind when you look at choosing the legal form of the business is really important. And one is because a sole proprietor is easy to start. It's my name, it's who I am, it follows my social security number, and it's lower paperwork requirements. I have limited access to capital because it's really all me. It's my credit score, it's everything involved around me. So if I leave, my exit strategy is, okay, I'm done, I'm going to retire, and I leave, I cannot sell my social security number. I cannot sell myself in that capacity. So what I actually end up doing is closing the business. I can refer my clients to somebody else, but I can't sell. I don't really have a business to sell. So oftentimes you'll see Ed Smith, a plumber, and he's doing plumbing. He's gotten his license. He's doing it. He controls what he does, when he does it, how much business he takes on, and he's happy. And when he's done, he doesn't care. He's closing shop, selling his van, and he's done. That's typically what you see in a sole proprietorship. And a partner, we're not seeing partnerships so much anymore. We're actually seeing people go into a limited liability company. And the reason for that is because partners, if you have a partner, more than one partner, you're liable for all of their decisions, and your personal assets are at risk. If that partner decides you've built this business up and it's gone great and he's done and he wants to sell, he can force you to sell, and maybe shut down the business against your wishes because he wants to leave and be done. And the only way that you can make that happen is if you sell the business. He could also decide, he or she could decide that they're going to head to the Bahamas and they're going to take all the money and go, and you're liable for that. And so partnership is a little bit more risky than some of the other forms of business. A C corporation, you're familiar, the big corporations, they are a separate entity from the owner, and they are a larger entity. They have more access to capital. There's higher record keeping requirements, and this big one that comes in oftentimes for people is double taxation. And what that means is that the corporation is taxed as a business, and then any of the monies that you take from the corporation as dividends, or as, let's say that you're the CEO of the corporation and you take a salary, your salary is taxed as income to you, and then the corporation is taxed as well. So it's seen as a double taxation, and then you can have unlimited shareholders. And that is one of those ways for being able to access capital, is that you can sell shares of equity within the business. And there's multiple forms of stock. So C corporations are quite a bit larger. One of the things with a C corporation is that they can own multiple businesses within a business. So for instance, one that is probably more common than we realize is you'll have somebody who, let's say that they own a construction company, and then either somebody that is related to them. I know of several where a brother owns a construction company and his sister's a realtor. And so they have formed a C corporation, and he builds houses, she sells houses, and then together they also have put together a property management business. And so they are able to manage, comes in particularly handy here on the coast if they've got rentals, or they have built a house and they're running it as an Airbnb or as some type of rental for a week or a night. So all three of those businesses can be run under the C corporation, and there's benefits for that. So oftentimes you'll see that they are the only, a C corporation is the only one that can own multiple businesses. An S corporation is a smaller version or step down of the S corporation. And when you look at it, on the next level is limited liability company, is similar to an S corporation for taxation. So what happens with the S corp and the limited liability company is there's a level of protection that is not available to the sole proprietor or the partnership that gives you basically a veil between you as a person and the business. And so it helps to protect your personal assets. The record keeping is a little bit higher than it is for like a sole proprietor, but it avoids the double taxation. So you're on an S Corp and a limited liability corporation. The company has an EIN number with the federal government, but your taxes go through with you personally as well. And so what will happen is you file your taxes very similar to how you do now as an individual, but that ENI number on the business is then added, and so you pay taxes at one time. I don't know if, Michaela, you're currently paying self-employment taxes, or yes. So it's basically that same format carries on into there. And Kirk, if you are working for somebody currently and you're paid, and at the end of the year you get a W-2, your taxes are then paid through the W-2. When you're a owner of a small business, you usually get a 1099 or another form of the W-2 that is how you are taxed. And self-employment taxes come in underneath that, where you're paying both your share as an employee and as the quote employer. So that's how you see those come through. So obviously, if you're wanting to be able to sell the business, a partnership, an LLC, an S Corp or C Corp is the only way that you can do that. And it's easier when you start the business, if you know what you want at the end, your goal at the end of it, then going in and setting up as one of these entities is easier. You don't want to go in and set up as a sole proprietor and then 2 or 3 years down the road have to totally restructure. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. All right. So business plan basics, who reads it? But this one always kind of cracks me up, because if the banks won't talk to me until I've been profitable for 3 years, they're not going to see my business plan until after I've been profitable for 3 years. So who's going to read it? And oftentimes this will come down to, when we talked about women-owned businesses, they talked about VA, veteran services. Those are the people that are going to read it in this scenario. They're also going to be the people who, especially if you're looking at starting a product line, there are going to be people that you may turn to that are going to either give you a patent if you're trying to patent it, or if you're trademarking it, that are going to want to know your business plan for that, and how things are going to be done and protected every step of the way. So that's going to be who's going to read a business plan for you. If you've got investors who are willing, and this could be family and friends who say, hey, I really think this is going to be great. I think it's a perfect opportunity and I believe in you. Here's $1,000. Let's get started. And they're going to want to know that you have a plan. They may not want to read it as in depth as a bank would, but they're going to want to know that you have a plan, and being able to show them that plan and this is what I've done. This gives a certain level of comfort in that. And then here I talked about, there's several online resources, and there's templates for just about anything that you want. You're going to want to make sure that you follow a standard format that answers all the questions that an investor or somebody that is going to back you is going to want to know. And again, the one that we use is LivePlan, and they give you a way to create some of the financial assumptions that are needed as part of a business plan, and that helps. And some of those assumptions is, how many of a product I'm going to sell, how much am I going to sell it for, how often am I going to sell it, what is it going to cost me to make it, all of those things. And then you're able to create those realistic financial projections. That comes into play as well as if you've got employees and you have people that are producing the product. Same way with you, Kurt, you're going to have people that can be on shift, that are properly trained and have all the information at hand to do their job. You're going to have the insurances and all of the permits or, you know, regulations met that are part of your particular business that may not apply to another business. And finding money. So finding money is always the fun one. You're going to have personal investment. And the thing that you need to understand is that you are, it's your personal credit score, and it's you, plain and simple. When you start out, everything comes back down to you. You can have family and friend investors, you can have outside investors, and you can have venture capital. And in the documents that Lindsay sent to you, there are some resources in there. Hatch the Future is one we're familiar with, like the Shark Tank and some of those TV shows. There are people in Oregon that do that. They're called angel investors, or the Hatch organization. And they're looking at businesses that are starting, and they'll actually look at you and ask you a bunch of questions, and they may be willing to fund you and invest in you to get something started. So we'll make sure that you guys have access to that information as well. Borrowing, banks, again, don't even really want to talk to you until after you've been profitable for 3 years. So that makes it very difficult. I think oftentimes most of us are like, if we've been profitable for 3 years, I don't really need you. I needed you back when I was getting started. So banks are not the typical area that you can start at unless you have a great relationship with your banker and your banker says, yes, I'm willing to do this. You may find that credit unions, or if you've been with a bank for a long time, I wouldn't hesitate to go sit down and talk to them and find out what information they would need and what they would be able to do. Economic development councils are a great place to start as well. They will oftentimes do smaller loans. I've seen them work with construction companies and help them to get started. Tillamook Economic Development Council is here at the community college as well. They're in the PRI building. I would assume that you have one as well, Michaela. I can help find out where that would be. OPAC is a resource that we have available through the SBDC as well. So you'll want to find out about that. And that is it's a PAC between Columbia and Pacific, kind of northwest area of the state, and they work specifically with businesses within that area. Business Oregon has an entrepreneur development loan fund, and then there are loan guarantees that you can get through the Small Business Administration, the USDA, and the VA. So Kirk, the VA is going to be one that you're going to want to work through, and Colonel Bill would be a great resource for that. We also have some resources through SBDC. He may be able to help you based on where you are within the VA system. I don't know how long that you were in the military. My dad served 20 years, so I'm familiar with some of the things that he was able to take advantage of, but there may be new ones based on where you served, how long you served, and any of those questions. If you guys have heard about the Economic Injury Development Loan, or the Payroll Protection Program that came out as a result of the COVID situation, that the SBA, Small Business Administration, through Congress has been a part of that. And there are loan guarantees that they will back through a local bank, and then ones that they carry as well. USDA is going to be agriculture related, so that's really not going to help you too much. There are grants that you can look at. I encourage both of you to look at Mercy Corps Northwest, and neither one of you are going into food related, so Food Roots won't really help you. But Mercy Corps Northwest in particular, if you have an idea, they have grants that come out. And if you have a business idea looking at starting a small business and you're able to put aside, and it levels vary, but if you're able to put aside $1,000, oftentimes they'll match that grant with 3 to 1. So if you save $1,000, they'll match it with 3. And so you have $4,000 to start off your business. And that's a grant. And they are well worth your going in and researching. I know one of the more successful ones that I've seen with them is where a guy started a business and he needed a trailer so that he could be mobile, and they helped him to buy that trailer. And then crowdsourcing or crowdfunding, we're very familiar with GoFundMe. Kickstarter is one, if you've not heard of it, where you create a video. It's like a 2-minute video and you present what your business idea is and you put it out there, and people that want to invest in it and donate to it and get going. Indiegogo is very much the same. And that Oregon intrastate offering, it's really hard to see the hatchthefuture.com in that blue, but that's one that you'll want to go look at as well. And they call these the incubators. And sometimes it really looks like, if you've ever seen incubators where they're helping eggs to hatch, those types of things. It has very much that same feel of being in a place where they're helping you to put it all together and watching to see, the egg develop and a chick is born. So that's one that is available. And then there's a whole bunch of those resources. Part of planning for and managing growth is that we update that business plan at least annually. And I talked about that a little bit earlier, is that we don't just build it and then set it on the shelf. We look at it and we're very consistent with where are we now, what changes do we need to make, how can we build and expand. And oftentimes expansion or building sneaks up on us, and all of a sudden we don't have what we need to meet the demand of the market. So we've got to plan for it. And that can be scary because we're like, hey, we just got started. We're 2 months into this. Don't tell me that all of a sudden I need to go out and rent a facility and start to produce 1,000 of these instead of 50. I was fine with 50. I have my mind wrapped around 50. Now you're telling me I need to do 1,000. So that is one of those areas that we work with. We use a program called Growth Wheel, and Growth Wheel will take you through each of these steps and help you to develop that as well. And that's a great resource. And then spending time monthly or quarterly analyzing financial statements, which actually means that you need to start your record keeping right off the bat in a format that you're able to look at. QuickBooks is one that is pretty common nowadays. It's a simple one, but there are a number of resources that are available to be able to document. And it all starts with how you input that information to begin with. Have either one of you had any experience or looked at financial statements?
No.
Most of the time it's our taxes
Yeah.
at the end of the year, and so we know whether we made money or didn't make money, and we need to learn how to do that, and then how to manage cash flow. And that comes into play with the situation of, do we have enough money to make it through the month, and sometimes 6 months, 8 months. Managing cash flow so that if we're billing, if we have clients and we're billing them, that the money's coming in at a consistent level, that I'm not doing work for a month and then not billing till the end of the month and not getting paid till 30 days later. So I've got a 3-month process taking place in there. I have to be able to manage my cash flow. Oftentimes, it's easy to understand that, again, going back to a contractor or who is building a house is that oftentimes they, people don't want to pay for something that hasn't been built yet, but we start moving contractors into what we call progress billing, is that as you make progress, you bill. So if you've put down the foundation, you bill for the foundation. As you moved into putting up the walls, you bill for the walls. As you put up the roofing and start to enclose the structure, you bill for that. That way, it's protection for both you as a contractor and protection for the client, is that you're both paying and seeing progress made, and you're able to manage your cash flow, because there's oftentimes a lot of money that is spent on materials that if you're not receiving money from your client, you're not able to keep those bills paid. And then reviewing market for necessary growth potential. Obviously, if you're working in a toy situation, you're always going to have children. And so your market is always, hopefully. And that's why I was asking as well, is if you're narrowing in on a certain age group where you're wide open to an age group, and your market potential is going to grow with that child all the way through.
Okay.
So you need to know what that is. And then what is your competition doing? Sometimes we're a little nervous about our competition because they're competitive. They're competing with me. How do I handle this? And one of the things that we have found throughout history, and surprisingly enough, is that Home Depot and Lowe's actually do better if they're located closer together. And the reason for that is, and oftentimes you see it in supermarkets as well, where they will match a competitor's ad. And, so if you're in my store and I has it for 10 cents less than I do, I'm going to match because I have you in the store. And if you buy it from me, chances are that while you're in my store, you're also going to pick up other things. And so if I know what my competition is doing and I'm able to either match it or to beat it even a little bit, I know that, there was one point where we had checked out Home Depot. We were looking for a refrigerator. We went into Lowe's. They matched it plus gave us 10%. So what happens is you need to know what your competition is doing. It keeps, it's healthy for both of you. So don't be afraid of competition. Don't be afraid of finding out what they're doing and what's maybe working for them that you can grow from. And then planning for expansion needs and how to use excess capacity. You almost need to be planning for expansion from the moment you get your first client or your first job. Because as you're successful, more and more people are going to find out about you. You need to be able to respond to that. Then planning for financial resources to support that growth. You're not going to be able to grow without resources to do that. So being able to communicate to your investors and people that are interested in your business will help you to continue to find elements of capital and be able to support your growth as you go. And that, comes back to being able to analyze your financial statements and seeing where you are. You need to understand what those are and take the ownership of that right away. It doesn't matter if you have a bookkeeper that's doing the bookkeeping and putting in the information for you. You don't necessarily have to be there and micromanage every bit of it, but you do need to understand how to read it and know what's happening. And then we're talking about exit strategy, which I've always, again, it's funny to me that it's at the end of the presentation when I really at times think that we need to be thinking at it from the beginning, but it's how do we build a business with value? And when we build a business with value, how are we allowing the time for that transition? So we know that we're going to go through stages in our business where we are going to be a baby, and then we're going to be a toddler, and then we're going to be in our teen years, and then we're going to mature. And so are we allowing for that process? We know that that is going to take time, and there may be steps along the way where we feel like people are wanting us to run, and we feel like we've just started to walk, and now, you know, we're being pushed from behind, and maybe we need to not take that pressure. We need to tell them, you know, or push back a little bit and say, no, I want to get up on my feet and be able to stand and walk well before I start running. Then we look at, you know, are we going to pass the business along to the next generation? We see that a lot in farming communities and in businesses where, you know, people have planned to pass it down to the next generation, and then the next generation decides that's not what they want to do. And oftentimes what's important in that is, if we're looking at passing it along to the next generation, is at what point do we bring them into the business, and do we start getting them involved so that they're ready to take it and they're willing and it becomes a part of who they are as well. And then when we come to selling a business, who would we sell to? Can we sell to employees? We know that Winco is an employee-owned business where the employees decided they wanted to buy it and they wanted to have a level of ownership in it. Do we sell to a competitor? Do we sell to somebody who supplies to us? Or is it to a stranger just off the street who walks in and says, I want to start a business? And then based on that strategy, what do we have in place for that to happen? And the other exit strategy is that we close our business. You know, we lock the door, we take the shingle down, and it's done. So whatever method that we have chosen as our strategy, there's steps that we need to take and ways of closing that or selling that business that we need to allow for. Why businesses fail? Poor planning, and that's oftentimes one of the things that we find as we get started in it is that we thought that it was easier than it was, because we weren't a part of maybe the whole process. And we looked at our previous experiences in a job and thought, well, you know, I'm working really hard and I'm doing everything I can to make this person successful. And I didn't see all of the things that they did behind the scenes that did make it successful. And so I walk away and say, well, I'm just going to start my business because I can do that. I've been doing it for years. So we don't fully understand all the things that are in play, and we need to understand planning. The other is poor management. You know, there's certain things that we didn't like to do, and so we didn't do them. We pushed them off to the side, and now they're catching up with us. Poor customer service is a huge one. And in restaurants and some of the small businesses that I work with here locally, a Yelp review can be something that really causes them harm, and it's anonymous at times, or they can't interact with the person to find out what happened, and so that becomes very frustrating, because all of a sudden this Yelp review shows up and it's really bad, and the person never interacted with them. They were never given a chance to fix that. So customer service and customer service reviews can really hit you hard. Insufficient resources, and that comes back to being able to access finances when we need them. Unrealistic expectations, and that sometimes is ourselves thinking that we can create something much faster. We get frustrated that it takes longer. We maybe didn't plan for it to take 2 years to be up and running on our feet, and so we don't have the finances in place to be able to do that, and maybe we need to scale back and look at it from a different vantage point. Wrong location. Location is one of those things that they tell you in real estate. It matters. If you're difficult to find, or people cannot find you at all, oftentimes that can be as simple as, you know, you're in a plaza and it's marked A through E, and yet it's not set up logically that way. And so people walk right by you and don't even know that you're there. Growing too fast can be a reason why a business fails, is that you just don't have the ability to recover and do what you need to do quickly. Wrong business structure, so that would come into those, whether I'm a sole proprietor or partner. Maybe I set up as a corporation and it's way too much. It's easier to go down to an S corporation. If you set up as a corporation and it's too much, you can go down to an S, but it's really hard to move from a sole proprietor to a corporation without some major restructuring in there. And then there's a dozen of other reasons as to why businesses fail. And a lot of it has to do with maybe not reaching out soon enough to get help, or not knowing where to go get help. So in summary, our time together today, we've talked a bit about researching and planning and how to find those resources. You've already taken a big step in that you're here taking this class. And so you've got resources available through the Small Business Development Center. And we're spread out enough that you can get that locally in Portland or here in Tillamook based on where you are. You can anticipate the unexpected by visiting with advisors and talking to people who are going to ask you questions that maybe you hadn't thought about yet. And growth is one of the major causes of business failure. It happened too fast, and you weren't anticipating and able to control that. Using the right legal form of business saves you a lot of money, time, and personal resources. And then seeking help before problems become insurmountable. And oftentimes that's hard because you don't know where to turn to. And so having an advisor can help you with that. So where to find information. So bizcenter.org is probably where you started, and that's where you would have seen all the SBDCs. And obviously during this time, we're not doing a lot of the in-person classes that we had been doing. And so you're seeing a lot more of the Zoom, which I think, Michaela, is where you said that you found us, is there were a lot more opportunities offered through Zoom classes because we aren't able to meet in person right now. The community colleges and the higher education system has still required that we not do in-person classes. SBA.gov has resources that are available. Those are being constantly updated, and right now a lot of the resources are being taken dealing with these EIDL loans and payroll protection programs that came about through the CARES Act that was passed by Congress. SCORE is an organization that you can go and look at, and there's a lot of information individually, and that will be more geographical. Economic development organizations are, again, pretty much by county. So you're going to look for your economic development organization in the county or area that you're in. Chamber of Commerce is a great place to start. They have a lot of information. It may be an organization that you want to join and become a member of. Libraries will provide a bunch of information, as well as community colleges. And then this Procurement Technical Assistance Center is one that will help with procuring state or government contracts that might not be as helpful in toys as it would be in looking at security services. So that may be one that you want to look at. And I don't know, maybe it might, Michaela, if you're looking at being able to offer for daycare services or, organizations that are providing care, even some of the state departments that provide care for youth that would look at those services. And then the state of Oregon itself is oregon4biz.com is one that offers some resources and options for you as well. And then this OSBDCN is the Oregon Small Business Development Center Network, and that's across the whole state. And we have resources that bizcenter.org is where you found us. There are training classes that are local and online that are done. And I would assume, Michaela, you have resources through a number of them in the Portland metro area because they're gonna cross over. LivePlan was the online business planning template. It's free through us when you take the class for 6 months. Otherwise, you can buy it and use it on your own if you wanted to. BizMiner is a financial analysis tool and is a great one if you want to look at a specific industry and find out how much money is being made. That and the market research that we provide is, if you go out and you do those on your own, can cost you upward of $1,000 to do. So sitting down and meeting with an advisor and coming up with some of these market researches are definitely to your advantage. Website optimization, SBIR, assistance, capital access, international trade assistance team is great if you're looking at taking your product international. And then GrowthWell is another one that I mentioned a little bit earlier. So these are things that are offered to our clients through the Oregon Small Business Development Center Network and are available for you guys free as you start a small business. So be willing to reach out and set up a time to sit down with an advisor and work with them. I'm not sure, Michaela, where are you located specifically?
Northeast Portland.
Okay. I will look up and see who's closest to you and who is available that you might want to reach out to and work with. And that is our Ready, Set, Start Your Business presentation. It gives you basically what you need to know to get started. This is how you can reach us. And as I said, I will follow up with both of you with a link to today's conversation and then what resources are located near you. One of the things that we have access to, and I will make my note right now, is there's a legal clinic, a small business legal clinic that is run through Lewis and Clark Community College. And that is available to small businesses. It's a way for you to access legal resources without spending a lot of time and money that is difficult as you get started. If you had all of the funds that you needed to get started, then you wouldn't necessarily be looking for those types of resources. But it's comparative to the beauty school where you have law students who are doing research and they would work on the questions and the if you're looking at what structure would be best for me to start up with. And then a law professor goes over the information. It's great for establishing contracts and some of those first things that you need to set up. And it gives the law students a way to learn and gives you the availability of getting legal services without an enormous cost. So I can send you that information as well. So do you guys have any questions? We have about a half an hour. We do not have to go till 3 o'clock. I want you guys to feel like you were going to be tied to a computer for that long. Obviously, Zoom classes or structure goes a lot faster than when we're in the classroom.
You had mentioned that there's resources for women-owned businesses. Where might I investigate those?
Okay, so I will send you links to those.
Okay.
And then, Kirk, I will do the same thing for you with the VA.
All right, thank you.
And I know were you guys able to look at the information that Lindsay sent you?
Yeah.
Okay. There's I know it's a lot of information, and especially, we've talked now for an hour and a half. There's a lot of resources that it's like, which one do I start with? And we can give you some guidance on where to start.
Okay.
And then I will try to find an advisor for you, Michaela, that you could start with, and reach out and tell them that you took this Ready, Set, Start Your Business, and you're ready to sit down and actually start working with somebody to move forward. And that will help. Most all centers will take you through some form of this scenario to say, have you thought about these things? Kind of that we want to make sure that you're ready to move forward. Oftentimes we could have 10 or 15 people that take the class and maybe 3 that move forward with it. So that's going to be one of those steps that they want to find out really how serious and where you are and ready to start. Okay. And then Kirk, you can set up an appointment through Lindsay.
Okay.
If you want to move forward and get started with it. And one of the things that'll take place for both of you is that an advisor will want to sit down about an hour, find out where you are in the process. And if you're wanting to then order the market research and move forward with it, you can look to see if they're offering a write your plan. Ours is What's Your Plan is what we call it. It may be different at a different center. And that will give you the ability to sign up for some of those classes, those next steps. Most all of the centers offer a small business management program. So you can start to take classes and develop your skills and all of the steps that need to take place in running a business. And I know we have a 2-year program on the small business management, and we start with HR. Some of the requirements in having employees, if you don't have employees, not a big deal, but it's nice to know if I was going to move out into hiring employees, what's needed. We look at financials, we look at marketing and branding. So over a 2-year period, you can build your skill level as a business owner as well. So I will send you the links to those, both in Portland and then here locally in Tillamook. All right. So if you guys have any questions, happy to answer them. If you're not, I can let you go and we can, I'll follow up with email and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, I don't have any questions.
Okay. All right. So I will stop the recording and I will send that to you guys. It takes a little while for it to convert, and I will send that to you, and then you'll have my contact information and you have Lindsay's, and we can help you from here.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.